I'm ready. We're up to about 130 people, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A. My name is Gary Gerwer. I'm substituting for Paul, who got held up in a meeting or an appointment somewhere. And for driving for me today is Alex Manriquez. So first off, let's see if I have some announcements. There were two flashes that came out. I believe it was yesterday within about an hour of each other. Flash 240. And it talks about fall 1 and fall 2 changes for the 22-23 year. I'm not going to read this whole thing. There's actually quite a lot to talk about in here. So I would recommend going over this flash. And I think I heard Brandy, so that's good. And then there's flash 241, which is also about fall 1 and fall 2. Talks about the submission, which reports for fall 1 need to be certified, and the supporting reports. Thing to remember with fall 1 is the SELPAs do not need to approve for the initial deadline, which is December 16th. And it'll tell you that right there. So another flash that you do want to take a look at, and it has a lot of good information. And does anyone else have anything? I kind of got on the spot at the last minute. So does anyone else have anything they would like to add?
I do not.
Okay, well, we'll get ready and jump into the questions then. So how this works, for those of you that may be new, is we ask that you type your questions into the chat box, and then we'll read them out. As you type your questions in, please number them, and I will call out if it's question 1, or if you have multiple questions, or question 2 or question 3. That helps Marshall when he makes his recording, so he can pinpoint to certain exact spots. With that, I will go through all the question 1s first, and then we go back after we've answered all the question 1s and go to the question 2s and question 3s. If you have a ticket in with the service desk, we ask that you continue just to work through the ticket. Don't duplicate efforts and ask that same question here in the Q&A. Also, we appreciate it if you could keep your questions brief, not multi-paragraph long with a lot of detail. Those are better suited for a service ticket because it is difficult in this format to try and read it for one thing, but then to go through all the specifications that are in the question to be able to answer it. We'll do our best though. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the chat box, and my dog just started barking. And we'll get started with the questions. Question 1 from Karen. We had a handful of students who come to us from another LEA as English only, but now the parents and teachers feel that they need to be tested. Do we need the parents to fill out a new home language survey to reflect the actual language spoken? Can parents request we test this way? And how do we document this?
So the answer is if the student shows evidence of a non-English primary language, even if the parent doesn't put the language on the home language survey, you can submit a TBD record with a correction reason code of 1, which is evidence of non-English primary language. If you don't know the particular language, you can use unknown in the code set.
But you don't have to update the HLS.
I mean, ideally you should, but if a parent is not electing to do that, just remember that it's a student's right to service, which means if the LEA sees that there's evidence the student might have an English proficiency issue, they have to test them.
All right. Next
Randy,
question.
Sorry, Gary. There's an FAQ on that that's pretty different than what you're saying. under the CALPADS FAQs. Might need to get updated. I think it was written before we had the correction reason codes.
Oh, I guarantee it was.
I'll ping you the link.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll move on to Doug's question one. In reference to the 18.1 report, end of year one, that reports the work-based learning counts that include internships, student-led enterprise, etc. Where can I find the guidelines in the documentation on what defines the criteria for when the information is reported? Two examples that I was given today are, the first example is a student that had an internship that started on January 2022 and ended in August of 2022. This was not reported in the 21-22 year as we just found out about them. Are they eligible to be reported for the 22-23 school year since they ended after July 1st, 2022? The second example is a student in the class of 2023 cohort and did an internship that ended prior to July 1st, 2022. Can we still upload them and have them included? My logic says no, but not knowing the guidelines for reporting, I'm only guessing. Please advise.
Well, you can put that information into the operational data store for the prior academic year. Because one of the things that you need to remember, particularly for the work-based learning data, is that they're doing analysis on these. There's only a couple of them that they're actually including in the CCI right now. But when they do the poll for the data based on a graduating cohort, they're pulling data from the operational data store for the previous 5 years. So even if you didn't report it last year and you think you should have reported it, you should go ahead and submit it up, even though it won't show up in your certified reports from 21-22. You should go ahead and report it with that academic year. And when it gets pulled for cohort purposes, when the student graduates, it'll be attributed to that student.
Okay, Karen, I see your question too. We'll circle back to that one. Eric's question one of our teachers left our district on September 30th, 2022. We have not hired a teacher to replace her. Do we have to report the current short-term sub that was in the class today census day? Do we have to use the 10-digit 999s for the seed or use the sub's own seed? I know this will create a misalignment because we don't have the correct credentials to teach the class or the CDE credentials. So usually you use the teacher of record, but if the teacher's left, then you have no teacher of record. So then you would use the sub's SEID number.
And with respect to credentialing, it doesn't matter because vacancies are always misassignments anyway.
Question one from Sue Ann. How do we still have access to CALPADS Codes management module?
I think she's talking about the local code mapping, and that functionality, Sue-Ann, was deprecated in the post redesign project. I think we pulled the vendors and everybody was using standard CALPADS code, so nobody was using that function anymore.
Question one from Sue. Known issue 6357. Any time frame for the resolution? 6357. Is that the one with the seeds or 99s?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was one of the scenarios.
I don't know if that one's in anytime soon.
It's not. It's in the general backlog. I think most of the EOI stuff that was left over got pushed back into the general backlog so that they could start focusing on fall one.
This may impact fall two potentially, right, with the SCSEs?
Yeah, we'll see
Or
when,
not.
when those start getting uploaded.
I mean, we may have to revive it if it does impact fall two.
Rebecca says, I think we should all sing together. So I don't know about that. I don't know if we'd sound like a choir or not. Question one from Natasha. How long do we need to wait in between SENR uploads where a student exits one school and enrolls into another school within our same district? I uploaded the exits, the file posted successfully, but when I did the next upload with the new enrollments, it failed with a long number invalid reporting school. Do I need to wait for the new revision in between uploads? You shouldn't have to wait for a new revision. It is, once it's posted, I would just grab an SSID number of one of the students and just check the enrollment and see if you see the exit. If you see the exit there, you should have no problem uploading the next one. If you do upload, or if you do look at the SSID and it, for whatever reason, it's not reflecting the exit, then I could see why you'd be getting the error. But it's usually pretty quick now when you upload the SCNR files. They usually, if they post without rejects, it's pretty quick.
Is that Natasha Mew?
Natasha Covell,
Oh,
Escondido.
all right.
But
But
I
I did pull up your job, Natasha. It looks like you lost a leading 0 on your school, your
Yeah.
Bear Valley. So check your SENR extract. Once you put that 0 back, send the file through and it should post.
that column should be a text file, right? So that you don't lose leading zeros.
Yeah, schools are always 7 digits.
Oh, that's the 102590 is the CDS number. Is it
Yep.
without the 0 in front? Yeah, there's only 6 digits there. Question 1 from Susan. Is it a known issue that the ODS 1.2 reports are not working? And I laughed a little bit because I've been getting a lot of tickets on the 1.2. I've wrote up 2 issues on the 1.2 recently. They work for some LAAs. For some LAAs, they don't work. For some LAAs, they work if you put in 1 school or 2 schools, but if you put more than that, they don't come up. They're timing out. So if it's if it is a bug that I wrote up, 6370, so they'll be looking at it. But I should say the ODS reports don't have as high priority as the snapshot reports, and those are running now, and those do seem to be working. Question 1 from Terry. When can we anticipate a new data guide? Randy?
I don't know. I don't know. We've been working on it for a long time. There's just been lots of other things in the fire. I'll have to check with Paula.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have anything else to add to that. We know it's woefully out of date.
Question 1 from Carol. Our middle school schedules all 6th graders into a PE class where the attendance is taken, and then some students are pulled out of PE and go to a music class based a couple days a week. This is done so the students still get their required minutes of PE, but since students are rostered to 2 classes, PE and music, for the same period, with attendance only taken in 1 class, I'm concerned about reporting. Will this trigger some kind of error?
Not
I don't
that.
know about an error.
Is it an elementary setting?
6th grade,
Middle school?
6th graders, or it says middle school 6th graders.
I think the most important part of that is not necessarily that the students are taking music, being pulled out of music, or being pulled out to go to a music class, but that the music assignment is reported. So if as long as you've got a course section with the music teacher, the fact that some kids are leaving PE and going into music is less relevant than the teacher's assignment at the middle school level teaching music. So as long as you've got a course section for the music teacher, I think you're okay. Also, we don't really, departmentalized courses at the middle school level are less relevant.
Okay, I see a couple questions too. We'll come back to those. From Daniela. Question 1, can you advise us on whether it is legal this school year to place a student who is quarantining at home on an independent study contract for ADA? Or is it once again no longer allowed because they do not have the classroom option available to them? We know they should be put on independent study to avoid learning loss, but we are concerned about ADA.
You should, go
Oh,
ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I was looking at, they have recently updated the FAQs for independent study because there were a lot of changes, but I couldn't find an answer to that specific question. So if you, probably you would go to the, send that question to attendance accounting. You see the email there.
And Alex has it on the screen.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Alex.
Okay. Question 1 from Sonia. We have a student that's been a runaway for over a month. Parent is in contact with the school daily, not able to complete the SARB process without the student's signature. Can we drop the student? Parent doesn't believe the student will come back. She's 17.
So no, you can't just drop a student. You have to send the student through the SARB process. And only when a comprehensive investigation has been completed as to the student's whereabouts, and why they're not in school, then you could exit the student. But all those things, all those steps have to be completed. And when you do exit them, it has to be within E140.
So if you do everything, but you can't get the student's signature, what do you do?
The student signature for what?
It says here she's not able to complete the SARB process without the student's signature.
That's really, well, okay. So that we would have to send probably to Dan Sackheim, because, you know, the requirements of the SARB process are not something I'm familiar with.
So if you send in a ticket, Sonia, we'll get it routed to the right folks, right? Or you want him
Sure.
to send it? Okay.
No, fine. They can send it to me. I'll forward it to Dan.
All right. Question 1 from Kim. For SPED, we have a settlement agreement that we remove all indications of special education from the student's files. We remove the records from our SIS and SACE. How do we get the records removed from CALPADS? The parent notified the district that when they enrolled a new district, they were flagged in CALPADS as SPED, but the requirement of the agreement was that this would not happen. There should be no indication the student has ever received SPED services or qualified for services. Thanks.
Joe, are you here?
I have not seen him.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. So as a result of a settlement agreement, the student shouldn't be identified as a student with disabilities, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So all of the records associated with the student, you know what, actually just send in this ticket because I want SPED to take a look at it. I don't know what legally we're required to retain. So if settlement agreements typically are associated with the district for the district that was in the settlement agreement. If the student was in a prior LEA, that unless that district was part of that settlement agreement as well, I don't know that they would have to delete the record. So send in a ticket so I can get some legal opinions from our SPED office.
Right. Question 1 from Val. I've been working on resolving MIDs. I noticed that the LEA contact page has not been updated. I've placed a request to have my own name updated. It's still using the last LEA and it's been closed twice. I've also received the reply mail from another district that the person no longer works there. Can we expect that to be updated? And she puts a link to the LEA contacts.
So I did verify that from your first ticket, they did update our local database with you. And so we just need to get that pushed out to the CCEs website. So Marshall, is that something you could work on?
Yeah, I'll get that done today.
She's got a ticket with you too.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
Progress.
Question 1 from Swanzetta. Will CALPAD start collecting ASA information? Our admin is saying there is a new law that seniors have to apply, but it's not a grad requirement. So they want to know if we have to report it. Thanks.
What's the
FAFSA.
No, there is a new law that requires all seniors to complete the FAFSA. The new law does talk about how the school has to certify that happens, but there is no kind of teeth or enforcement in that. And right now, no, you are not required to submit anything to CALPADS.
Question 1 from Clara. SPED students who reside in our boundary rejected receiving education from us and chose to attend another school out of state. Families are paying for the tuition. We are evaluating them annually. Do we need to report their enrollment? If so, under the district level school or home school?
No, this is a parental placement in a private school. So if they're sending them out of state, and they have parentally placed them in a private school and they are declining services through an ISP, as well as declining the offer of FAPE, then the only record that you would have to report, if assuming the student was evaluated, right? If the student was evaluated, you would submit up a SPED record with a plan type of 700, which is parent declines. But there's no reason for you to send up the annual offer of FAPE unless the parent agrees to accept it.
Okay, question 1 from Sabrina. I have multiple GER 5 errors for migrant students. What is the best way to enter these program records? It's a GER 5.
That's not eligibility, right? Or is it?
That's just ownership. GER 5 is,
I know, but it could be because of the
it
date.
is an eligibility record.
So looking at what your start date is in the program record and the enrollment of the kid, did you ever have the kid enrolled? Because if you don't have the kid enrolled,
Yeah, that's the only way they would.
that overlaps that program record.
Yeah, I think it's the concept of the 3-year period that sometimes it doesn't jive with your enrollment start date or enrollment period for the migrant ed, because it's a 3-year thing. So maybe it doesn't match the ownership enrollment with the program start dates or even the end dates that they're trying to put in.
So do you think it's a defect, Kyron? Is that what you're saying, that the GER 5 is not working?
No, it's more about their practice. Do they close the program every year, or do they do it every 3 years?
You know, best case scenario, best practice for migrant records in particular. I know that you guys are used to submitting up their qualifying eligibility period. But, you know, so much can happen within that 3-year period. So if you're submitting up a record with an exit date 3 years out, that's, if the student exits your LEA prior to that date, it's going to cause issues one way or another. So best practice would just be, for your migrant records, just send up their qualifying eligibility start date without an end date.
All right.
And if that doesn't work, send in a ticket so we
ticket,
can
we'll
look at
take a
the
look.
SSID.
Yes. Okay, question 1 from Deborah. Are apostrophes allowed in the students' names? Yes, they are allowed. However, I think we have a defect that
It's
is
fixed, Gary.
What's it fixed?
Yes,
Oh,
finally,
all right.
at long last.
Okay.
Having so many problems with that since April that I think as of yesterday afternoon, I believe that IVR 9 is working correctly, and I would love for nobody to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, good. So it should work, Deborah. I mean, we did have the defect, but it should be working now. I know the workaround was at the time, just take the apostrophe out and put the student's name in, and you could add it after the fact, but should be working. Question 1 from Rebecca. Peeing off what Karen Vargas asked, we have had the opposite, where the student was a home language survey that indicated the student was EL from another LEA, but they completed an HLS with us and they were EO. The student left the first LEA before they could be tested, but with our home language survey, we technically would not be able to force the parent to test the student. I realize that we aren't supposed to be having parents complete an HLS if it was already done previously, but we kept getting pre-K students who were following through the cracks during registration because we already had an LEA status for them from when PKs were completing the HLS form.
So first of all, pre-K students, preschool, anybody not TK or K grade levels should not be filling out the HLS. That technically doesn't count for purposes of testing for the initial ELPAC. And so if it was done in pre-K, I'm not talking about TK, I'm talking about pre-K. If it was done prior to their entry into kindergarten, then that HLS is null and void for purposes of the initial ELPAC. You would have to re-administer it. So if you're talking about a TK student, then that HLS, the very first one done, wins.
Okay.
It seems odd though in this case because they didn't act on that first one, and now the parents go to the next district and they don't want their student to be EO or EL.
Yeah.
Well, as long as if the parent is electing a change to the primary language on the home language survey, then as long as the student hasn't been tested, and this is the real important thing, is there is no evidence that the student needs to be tested. That's really important, because the Title III office will always tell you that it's a student's right to EL services. And the only way you determine whether or not those services are necessary is if the student's tested. So parents cannot exclude kids from testing. They can exclude them from EL services once they've been tested and designated as EL. They can submit a waiver locally.
All right. Natasha is screaming at Angela. Thank you. Sean, question 1. Any update on the fix for IVR 002 for SENR MPS? For Census Day, I am still unable to show MPS kiddos. Thanks. It's 6343, still an issue.
I thought that got fixed and then we broke it on the closed schools, but I
No,
guess they're both
it's
still
happening.
open, huh?
Yeah, it's happening in a couple of places.
There's 2 of them.
It's supposed to be in this release for this coming Tuesday.
I thought that you had to get the clarification on the rule, right?
That's on the closed
Oh,
schools.
okay.
So Brandy, that's that email thread that you're on about the IVR2 is also triggering on people are trying to make updates to enrollment records on schools that closed on June 30th, 2022, and they're not able to.
But
Well-
6343 is going to go in next Tuesday, Angela?
It's still active, but yes, that's the target.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because the reason that happened is because it was fixed. It was allowing LEAs to enroll students in closed schools.
Right. I just had one
Yes.
today before that
And
fix went
they
in, and
fixed
it was
it.
like it's closed in like 2009.
Yep.
But they shouldn't be allowed to submit them. They should be allowed to update them.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's a bug, a defect in the way it was implemented, but
Yeah, if
Sounds
you could
like
just reply to that email. We were kind of waiting for your blessing before
Yeah,
we move forward.
I'm diverted on a project I gotta get finished today. I haven't
Okay.
checked in my email, so
Okay.
I'll check.
May says IVR 0009, and that's all. Oh, that was the error that was fixed. From Lori, did I hear correctly that the end of your SCSE records that were in course sections with the generic all nines were not stored in CALPADS? If so, this is a problem for the CCI as our community college dual credit courses are submitted with all 9 SEIDs. And I know the error that I wrote up, it was definitely the LAs that I looked at, but I did not check all the LAs to see if this was the case. So we haven't had a chance to.
And we don't know if it happened the whole time EOY was open, right?
Right.
Somewhere along the way it broke, or maybe it was always broke. I don't know.
And at 3:16, Alex posted a link for the attendance accounting email. Question 1 from Ray. Is October 31st the deadline to have all the 181, 182 program records in CALPADS, or is that the cutoff date for accepting applications? That is the cutoff date for accepting applications. And it's in the
Receiving
yes.
applications, not, you have to receive them by that date.
Yes.
But doesn't the program record have to have be dated?
On or before Census Day.
Oh, 1031.
1031.
Before 1031.
31. So acceptance and start
And
date.
oh yes, both of them. Yes,
But
yes.
it doesn't mean like if you accept it on the 31st and you still have to evaluate and that goes into November, you can still backdate it to the 31st.
Yes. Question 1 from Lou. I noticed that the GER error is coming up for migrants if there is no migrant ID. I thought the migrant ID is a required field.
That would
That's a
probably be
GER2.
Yeah, GER2.
Yeah.
I did check her records, Gary, the Live Oak person who asked about that, and the exit dates were not, they were, first of all, they were old migrant records from like 2020 and 2021, but they had start and end dates, and the start dates aligned, but the exit dates did not. So they were out of alignment there. And I don't know if that, Randy, causes the GER 5 on eligibility SPRG files.
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
On a program record, if the exit date is outside of their enrollment record,
Yeah,
on an eligibility, that can trigger the GER 5 too.
Yes,
right?
it will. Yes. That's actually the only way that it gets triggered on eligibility records, is if the exit date is outside of the enrollment period, or you don't have an enrollment for them at all.
Okay. Question for Angela. The defect for special question from Jen to Angela. The defect for special characters was fixed for both the SINF and SSID match import?
Correct. It's working on both now.
Okay. Question 1 from Claudia. How is the DC match work for those students we enroll in CALPADS without the apostrophes? Well, you can use the apostrophes now, but not sure how to answer that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Brandy, if you know whether or not the Department of Health Services matching algorithm matters.
I think it's more robust than ours.
Yeah.
I think they
probably don't even account for
exactly.
it. I think it's kind of more Soundex-ish like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. Question 1 from Larnie. What are some possible scenarios for enrolling SPED students in a private school with a 50 enrollment code other than the student attending private school with an ISP? Flash 161 states the K through 12 attending private school receiving services are enrolled with a 50 code. Does the phrase receiving services pertains to receiving service with an ISP plan only?
Right. So if you're going to use enrollment status 50, that status is reserved for infants and toddlers on IFSPs or students in private schools on individualized service plans, ISPs. Now, there are instances in the state of students that are attending private schools, and I'm not talking about non-NPS schools, right? I'm talking about private schools, but they're on IEPs as a result of settlement agreements. In those cases, even though the student is enrolled in a private school, the enrollment would not, in CALPADS, would not reflect private school enrollment. It would be a district level enrollment with a primary enrollment status, because any student on an IEP has to have a primary enrollment status. So there are instances, but the data don't reflect that in CALPADS. They have to be submitted a little differently. So I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Arnie.
Okay. Question 1 from Yadira. I am late to the party, so sorry if anyone else is having issues with their SPRG exit file. I am uploading my SPRG exits and I'm getting 88 GER 05s. The students are enrolled with our LA. Is there a known issue for this? No, there isn't a known issue, and what we were talking about before is the exit dates have to be within your enrollment period. If you're exiting, and make sure they're within your enrollment period.
Maybe identify what kind of program records are getting the GER 5.
Yeah. And that gets us to the end of the question 1s, and it's only 3:37. So that's pretty good. We should have plenty of time to go back to the question 2. So going back to the top, first question 2 was at 3 o'clock from Karen. One of our students left us last year, and we are now providing services through the private school enrollment. The student is an EL and had an open LIP program record. We usually keep these open even when the students leave us. Will I have a problem later on down the road because now the student has 2 open LIP records in CALPADS, one from the first school and one from the now private school enrollment? Should I close the first record or just ignore this? I don't think you're required to close these.
No, but why would you submit it for a private school?
True.
Right. I'm like, what's going on there? Yeah, you shouldn't be submitting them for private schools.
Okay. And question 3 from Karen, clarifying question, is the home language survey a required form in all new registration packets, even if the student is coming from a different public California school?
Well, it's part of your enrollment process, but regs basically say that a student should only be administered the home language survey once. Therefore, if you have the ability to and know that the student is coming from another California public school district, you should not administer the HLS, or if you do administer the HLS, you should not use it for students who are coming from another California public school. And the way that you check that is, prior to entering anything into your SIS, download the SSID extract for current enrollments at your school. And the SSID extract will show you whether or not the student already has an English language acquisition status and whether or not the student actually has to be administered the HLS again. Because if there's something in there already, that already tells you that it's been administered.
And Alex is showing on the screen in the SSID extract what field it is that will show you that. 13 there. At 3:01, question 2 from Carol. Our middle school wants to add a SEL anti-bullying community building class for all students, grades 6th through 8th. Any idea what course code that might be?
Yes, we have an SEL course code. It's socio-emotional learning. I don't know what the code is, but if you do a search on social emotional learning, there it is.
We're getting there.
No, it's not that one. It's socio. Maybe try
Emotional.
socio.
Too emotional.
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
Social emotional learning.
9229. There's your code. Okay, question 2 from Natasha. Where can we find a list of valid credentials for using with the new 6028, 6029 non-classroom job codes?
I love this question. CTC has a website that Alex is taking you to. There's one for CALPADS course codes. This one, the ones you're looking for are non-classroom based codes. So you go to CalSAS information, and then you scroll down and you'll see appropriate credentials for non-classroom based assignments. And then you type in the codes.
There you go. I'm so glad Alex is driving today because I can never find these that fast. Question 2 from Suan. What is the status of SSID tool? Oh, did we find those ones yet? I'm sorry, moving too fast.
No, it's okay. I didn't find them, and I don't know
Oh, okay.
if I'm
6028 and 6029.
They may be, they may not have been updated in this tool yet because they are brand new codes
Okay,
for this year.
so to be determined. Okay, question 2 from Suan. What is the status of the SSID tool in CALPADS? Has it been updated yet?
If you're talking about the 80% threshold, Suan, the answer is yes. So for everybody on this call, please start using the SSID matching tool in lieu of looking up these kids one by one. You can certainly, if you want to double check to make sure that it's functioning as you would hope, you can certainly do that. But I would strongly urge you, and Alex is pointing to the verbiage in the flash, that the major defects with this tool and the results file have been resolved. The only thing left is probabilistic matching, and that's a future enhancement. But right now, you should be receiving up to the top 20 results sorted by the highest percentage match at the top, and then it will filter out any matches below 80%.
It's also updated on the homepage, Alex, if you happen to have CalPADS open.
always.
It's the third one on the list, important messages.
My internet's a bit slow.
Slow.
I was gonna say,
Apologize.
what is going on here? I've never experienced that page being slow.
There it is. Number 4 on the list.
Yeah, so yours is sort of different than mine too.
Question 3 from Suan. Why are some students' names and local IDs missing on the certification error report? I don't know.
We need a ticket.
We might need to send that up. Question 2 from Rebecca at Lancaster. I think it's hate to beat a dead horse, but is there anything that is going to be done about the SELA ODS extract pulling the most current SELA record instead of the earliest one pertaining to their earliest kinder enrollment?
As far as I know, there aren't any plans to do that.
So we want it to pick the most recent, even though there's an earlier EO. Let's say there's 2 EO records.
I don't think it's relevant for EO. It doesn't really matter. EOs are not counted in any sort of subgroup.
Okay.
So their
then
status, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I just use it as an example. So EL, sometimes students have multiple ELs, right? Prior to when we converted and had the SELA record.
Right.
We had, and they want to have the earliest state of the EL.
No. There's so many problems with that, you guys, because the EL records and the SELA records that were converted from when it was being collected in the SINF file a gajillion years ago, those records are so jacked up. There's no other way to put it. They're just jacked up. And so the most recent instance of a student's English language acquisitions, particular language acquisition status, is the most reliable because we've put in many more validations since then. The only thing that potentially could screw things up is when, and I've been seeing it a lot lately. That's actually what I've been spending all my time doing today, is as a result of mid merges.
Yeah.
You guys are merging these mids, their SELA records are merging, and you know, a TBD is now trumping like a EL record, for example. But that's the only thing that could give you bogus information if it's selecting the most recent.
Question 3 from Rebecca. Are UTK students supposed to be tested for ELPAC? And if so, then we are automatically required to send up the LIP for them as well, correct?
Paula, did you want to say anything about that? Have they made a decision?
No, hopefully in the next few weeks. Right now, I think the assessment office sent out, you know, they put on one of their flashes that only the TK kids who meet the ADA requirements are supposed to be tested. That confused everybody, and now they're actually rethinking that. And so they're meeting with legal and others to provide better information about that. So I don't know if that helps. Supposed to be, so basically there's no definitive answer right now, but right now the assessment office is saying if they're TK and they meet the ADA requirements, then you should test them. And then are we automatically required to send up the LIP for them as well?
No.
For the TK, even though they're kindergarten, that we won't throw an error saying there's a missing LIP?
It's probably a certification.
Right. Isn't there certification error saying that they need a LIP if they're
Yep.
Yeah,
but-
there is.
Well, but that's only if they're EL.
right?
For
So if
ELs
they're
only,
EL.
yes.
I'm just thinking ahead of what they're trying to say. So if they are EL, obviously if they're not EL, they don't need a LIP. I think they're asking if a TK kid needs EL program if they're EL. And I think the certification validation doesn't look at age, it just looks at whether or not they're in kindergarten. Is that correct?
Correct. Cert 146.
Question 2 from Ray. For incidents regarding SPED students, we are under the impression that the action attribute removal to interim alternative setting can be set to 3, no removal. But at the time of an incident 3 days before, the student was not special ed. Will this cause an error in CALPADS?
Yes. If the student was not a student with disabilities on the date of the incident, then if you put no removal, it's going to tell you that that field shouldn't be populated.
Question 4 from Rebecca. Will we ever be able to backdate the SELA records to match the enrollment start date like we used to be able to do so that they would be counted for census day? We are able to do it for NSLP records. I'm asking because we have a transition of job duties going on between 2 of our district departments, and now there are students that didn't get tested in the 30-day window who will now be tested after census day. even though they were enrolled as of census day?
No, and that's because the initial English language acquisition status records come directly from the test vendor, and the date is derived based on the test completion date. So you can't backdate them.
And
Yep.
in the report, we did adjust the report to account for some start dates that were after census day during the COVID time period, but it's been reverted back, and we brought up the issue, the question, but there's program says no. So it answers no.
Okay, question 2 from Larnie. What is the purpose of the program 185 for the TK program? Is it just to set them apart from those who are truly kindergarten? Is the program code used on something else?
Yes, it's to be able to distinguish students participating in transitional kindergarten versus, because they have a kindergarten grade level. But next year, we're going to be collecting a distinct TK grade level, and very likely we can probably get rid of this program record.
Okay. Karen, I'm sorry. I don't know what your original question was. You say my sis did it. Where can I find documentation on this? Does anyone remember what that was referring to?
Oh, it's probably the migrant records, I'll bet.
Oh, okay, right. And documentation, the data guide talks a little bit in the CFS. Leanne says, thank you, Brandy, for letting us know the SSID tool is working. Question 1 from Charlene. Do we know what the anomaly percentages are for 22-23? Are they still less than 2%?
Yep, 2%.
Chris says, I looked up students manually when the SSID tool doesn't find a match. I found matches it has missed several times.
And we do know that it's going to, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say that's great that you're doing that due diligence, because there are going to be those occasions where it doesn't find the match.
Yeah, and that most of the LEAs that I talked to, I did a series of workshops for Infinite Campus users last week or the week before, I can't remember. And most of the users that I talked to said that it was about 99% accurate, that there were a few that they knew came from California public schools that didn't result in a match.
Good. Question 2 from Eric. How often is CALPADS updating TOMS? It's usually a nightly process.
Yes, but just keep in mind that it's about 48 hours. We send data to TOMS every night, but it takes TOMS about 48 hours to get their test registration records into the test management system.
Okay, at 3:40 something, I just lost my time now. Alex posted a link to the CTC credentialing tool. Judy asks, when changing the setting from PS to K for students with disabilities, is the PS setting deleted on the student's 5th birthday?
If they're in kindergarten. So it's not just age based. They have to be in kindergarten and age 5. So if they're age 5 and they're still in preschool, then leave it open. If they're or if they're not enrolled anywhere, right? Because they're just receiving services, they remain preschool age until they enter kindergarten.
Okay. Robin's happy that next year we're going to be collecting distinct TK grade levels. Oh, and Karen Vargas is saying the document, do we have documentation on the HLS?
I thought Alex brought it up on our website. That's the closest you're gonna get. Yeah. Oh, just that page right there, the first sentence. Okay.
Correction. I don't know if we have anything that's
Eng-
specific on the.
The English Language Acquisition Office, Program Office would have something, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Brand?
the CDE website, if you just Google HLS, I'm sure something's going to pop up.
Okay. Barbara says, I guess this is question 1. My CCEs are still gone, and I know they were not all fixed by other schools. I thought that was fixed. Do we still have some CCE issues? I know some were fixed.
I thought we did.
What was the timestamp on that one, Gary?
355. Just ask it.
Barbara Smith.
Still gone. Yeah, that one's a known issue.
Still an issue. Okay.
Yeah, that one, I believe.
I thought they worked on it this sprint, so it'd show up on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it was high on the list. So resolved. Yay. That means it's in testing and should be there by Tuesday, Barb.
All right. Lori sent a message to me, so I'm not sure if everyone else can see the question, but it, basically she checked, and her community college dual credit marks for end of year in sections where the SEIDs were all 9s are showing in the CALPADS Online Maintenance, and also pulling in the 3.11 report. So that is good to hear. That means it's not every LAA that was affected, just possibly the ones that I submitted the defect for. And Karen asked, can we share that doc?
Yes.
So Alex will put that in the chat. Joanne has a comment. So then there is an issue. You want districts to use the SSID matching tool. However, if districts are relying on the tool as being accurate, but there is a potential that is missing finding matches, that increases the potential for mids.
Correct, Sue Ann.
At 357, question from Charlene. We had a student marked EL back in 2019 twice, but the student was EL by another LEA in 2018. Now the same student has a student in the same LEA, has a student in the 22-23, and the duplicate EL is creating conflicting SELA records for them. How can we help?
I don't know.
Didn't we make that conversion like in 2018 or something?
Yeah, I mean,
This duplication may be mid-merge or something.
I guarantee that's probably what it is, if they're recent.
Yeah.
So if it's a result of a mid-merge and one of the test records is in the current year, then the LEA would need to submit a stairs incident to have that result removed, and ETS can delete the record. But if it's in a prior year, we'll have to remove it through a data request.
Send us a ticket, Charlene, so we can see what's going on.
Question 2 from Sylvia. Having the student in, this is an acronym I haven't seen before, having the student in PPPSS with enrollment 50, is it okay to have submit the initial IEP for the student not having an ISP?
No, that's parentally placed private school, by the way.
Okay, thanks.
No, you can't submit a private school enrollment with an offer of FAPE on an IEP, right? So if you are evaluating the student, the student is attending a private school in your district, you are evaluating them. That initial evaluation, the plan type can never be IEP. It must be an ISP. If it's not an ISP, if the parent ends up rejecting the initial offer of FAPE and elects not to be put on an ISP, the record that has to come up, you can put a private school enrollment, but the record that would have to come up would be initial evaluation with plan type 700, parent declines.
Hey, Natasha says for our information, the non-classroom based job tool on the CTE website was last updated September 21st, 2021.
Right, and CTC does have the current, they do have the new codes that we added. They just probably haven't added it to their decoder because they're not actually going to start processing those codes through CalSAS until next November or next August. That's why they're not in there yet. But we'll see. And they're going through their current monitoring process right now. So they'll probably wait till after November 1st to add them.
Okay. Question 5 from Rebecca. Did she miss something? TKs are going to be a distinct grade level next year?
Yes, it was a law that passed. It was in the trailer bill.
Yeah, and we'll communicate something soon about the main changes that folks should be thinking about this year because it'll start next year. We just haven't done that communication yet.
Question 1 from Jamie. I'm sorry if this was asked and I missed the answer, but if a new student enters our school, are we not legally allowed to ask for a home language survey, even if they came from another public school? I only ask because we have caught in the past where the SELA needs correction, but my enrollment team is under the impression that families don't need to fill it out.
If they already have one, you know, whether you can ask for it legally, I don't think there's anything preventing you from doing it. But it does say in regs that students should only be administered the home language survey once in their academic career in a public school. So, you know, I know it goes out as part of your enrollment packets. It's part of your online registration, but the HLS is the primary reason students end up getting tested more than once, giving it to them multiple times. So to the extent that you can develop local processes to make sure if students already have an English language acquisition status other than TBD in CalPADS, and even sometimes if they do have a status of TBD, there has to be a primary language associated with that record, which means the HLS has already been administered. So if there's something in there already, you don't need to give it to them again. Or if you've already had them fill it out, that result should be null and void because there's already a status in there for them.
Okay. Barbara, I have a question too here, but I'm not sure I understand it. You're saying you have a student who was no-show and 470, but I'm not sure what the question is or what that's related to. 401, Karen posted the link for stairs. Question 2 from Jan. Can you please? Oh, I wanted to say a comment. Mika, thank you, Angela. My SIMP file that contained apostrophes just posted without any problems.
Hooray.
Question 2 from Jan. Can you please show the list of potential fixes that will be going in soon? I got here late. Actually, we didn't show one today.
I have it up if you want me to share it, Gary.
Sure.
Okay, it's going to mess up your chat.
Yes, it is. That's all right. We're almost done.
Yeah, so Jan, we did not share this at the beginning of the call, so I'm glad you asked. These are what have been identified as either finished testing or in testing. So I expect a few more to be added to the list since it's only Wednesday. We've got a couple more days to go. There's Barbara, that's the one you were asking about, the anomalies. This one came up last week about the SPED discrepancy extract. It wasn't allowing people to request the file. Yeah, a couple other anomaly ones. And also the known issues is up to date with the fixes that went in yesterday.
Awesome. Okay. Question 2. Oh, so Barbara's giving more detail here. I have a student who was in 470 no-show. An adjacent school district had the same thing, same student, different SSID. So neither of us can combine or delete. I think that's a known issue. Don't remember the number of that one.
I'm not familiar with that one. So is she saying it's a mid and she can't combine it?
I think that's what it was, but didn't we have an issue with the N470s and combining?
You do if you're trying to have one student with 2 SSIDs, both are at your LEA and one of them is an N470. it sounds like she's saying something else. So
Oh, adjacent school, yeah.
yeah, so just adjacent school district. So Barbara, make sure they're showing up on your mid results grid rather than trying to use the resolve anomaly not on report function. And if they're not showing up there, make sure your first name, last name, and birth date matches, and then it should show up.
Sabrina says, I'm sorry, I missed the answer to how to enter the migrant program to avoid errors. I think we said just to make sure that your exit dates were within your enrollment period.
Yeah, so Sabrina, go to your view submission status page and click on the view for the individual errors. What I was seeing is that your exit dates were not in alignment with your enrollment dates. Your exit dates on your program records were out of alignment with your enrollment dates.
And the last is Jan says, don't forget Sue-Ann's joke at 4 o'clock. I'm sorry, I missed that. Going back to 4 o'clock. And there's Sue-Ann. What is black and blue, black and blue, black and blue? Having a district submit a stairs request. Is that the joke? Okay. Okay, well, with that, we're going to call it a day. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks Paula and Brandy for helping out. Really appreciate it, and everyone else. And we will be back again next Wednesday at 3 o'clock.
Thanks, guys.